Oh, hello there. I didn't see you come in. I've been expecting. I was told there would be some adventurers wandering in my direction, ready to embark on a journey of discovery. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started.
I can see by the look on your face that you are ready to know about how Bayesian statistics can be applied to time series analysis. Well, great news, because that's exactly what you're about to learn. Before we begin, we want to assume that you have at least a basic understanding of time series in general. A time series is a stochastic process of state variables whose current state depends on its past, with some added random noise. Yep, time series analysis, the mysterious and elusive technique that can be used to predict the future. Together, we can unravel these secrets as we embark on this quest with a quick introduction to Bayesian Structural Time Series Modeling. In this tutorial, we introduce Bayesian Structural Time Series models based on the paper Predicting the Present by Stephen L. Scott and Hal Varian. They use this technique in their paper to forecast economic data that is only periodically released by combining historical time series data with Google search data as covariates in order to nowcast the economic indicators in between their release dates. We will be implementing the model utilizing the R package BSTS, but if you so choose, Python has a causal impact package that has Bayesian Structural Time Series built in as well. So what is Bayesian Structural Time Series? BSTS is made up of three separate components: a structural time series model, a spike and slab regression component, and Bayesian model averaging. Let's take a look at these components one by one, shall we? In this section, we provide an overview of structural time series models, aka state space time series models. Note that we do not enter the Bayesian context just yet. Here we consider structural models from the classical perspective first. In structural time series modeling, we consider our data to come from some unobserved process called the state space and attempt to model this latent state. The data we observe is generated by this state space, but with added noise. The simplest model is called the local level model, and the equations for the model are listed here. Here, the t is the time index, and mu t is our latent state, the unobserved level at time t. There are two different sources of error here, the epsilon t and the xi t. These correspond to error in the level xi t and the error due to observation at epsilon t. This model estimates the series by considering only the level of the series at each time point. We can think of this as analogous to the intercept in linear regression, but allowing for the intercept to vary over time. We now move on to the local linear trend model, which, as you can see, is very similar to the local level model, but now we add nu t, which is an additional state component to represent the slope. And with each new state component comes a new possible source of error that also needs to be modeled. More generally, a state space model looks like this. But what do these fancy equations mean? Well, the first equation is called the observation equation. It tells us how our observed time series, y, is related to the unobserved state, alpha. The second equation is called the transition equation, and it describes how the state, alpha, transitions at each time point. But what are z, t, and r? They can be fixed design matrices, contain model parameters, or both. This allows for a lot of flexibility and allows us to describe a wide class of models. Fun fact for you, ARIMA models are special cases of structural models. Those Greek letters on the right, they are error terms. And now we look at the Bayesian components of the model, the first of which is spike and slab regression. It is convenient to model covariates as a traditional regression component, but sometimes variable selection proves to be quite challenging. BSTS uses a spike and slab prior to assist in this endeavor. In practice, the spike component is usually an independent Bernoulli prior for each beta or regression coefficient in the regression model. Each covariate can be given its own unique probability of being included in the model, but for simplicity's sake, each covariate could be given the same prior probability. Others can be given a probability of 1 if it is known that they should be included in the model. The slab component is a normal gamma conjugate prior, named as such because the parameters can be chosen to make it non-informative or weakly informative conditional on the spike prior. But if prior information is known, it is easy to include that information in the model as well. Now we have everything we need to predict the future. First, we need to simulate the latent state alpha using some sort of algorithm or algorithms. The Kalman filter and Kalman smoother are commonly used when evaluating a state space model. Then, once we have our simulated latent state, we can simulate the model parameters given our data and the latent state. And finally, we can simulate our regression coefficients and error terms from a Markov chain. Repeatedly cycling through these 3 steps can yield different approximations for our latent state and our regression coefficients. Bayesian model averaging is a byproduct of the spike and slab priors placed on the regression coefficients and the Markov chain Monte Carlo simulation. Since different draws from the posterior distribution can include different covariates to include in the model, taking the model averages will ensure that, for the most part, the covariates in the model should in fact be there. Of course, no variable selection technique is perfect, because we all know that correlation does not imply causation. But using the spike and slab prior is a good way to hedge against selecting predictors that are spurious. Now that you've seen the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure you want to dig deeper and see how this can actually be applied. Glory and reward await those who are brave enough to navigate the trials and tribulations involved in learning Bayesian Structural Time Series. Come, stalwart adventurer, let us explore this dungeon of mysterious treasures. In the following tutorials, we will battle untold horrors and demons together. And as you continue to level up, you will gain the strength to take down those who guard the secrets of Bayesian Structural Time Series.